Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he swung the heavy mining pick against the rock wall. The heat in the deep tunnels of Kepler 442b made every breath feel like fire in his lungs. Around him, dozens of other humans worked in silence, their backs bent under the weight of endless labor. The blue-skinned Zephyrian guards watched them with cold eyes, their energy whips ready to strike anyone who dared to slow down. Amy Rodriguez worked beside Jake, her small frame struggling with the massive chunks of ore that needed to be moved. She had been his friend since childhood on Earth, back when Earth still belonged to humans. Now they were just two more slaves in the vast mining operation that fed the Zephyrian war machine across the galaxy. "Keep moving, dirt crawlers," snarled Overseer Vextha, his voice echoing through his translation device. The tall alien moved between the workers like a predator, his forearms ending in sharp claws that had torn the flesh of many humans who failed to meet their quotas. "The ore shipment leaves in 6 hours, and you are behind schedule." Jake kept his head down, but his hands tightened around his pick. He remembered when Vextha had first arrived at the mining colony 3 years ago. The Overseer had made examples of 12 humans on his first day, leaving their bodies hanging from the entrance as a warning to all who might think of rebellion. Since then, Jake had learned to hide his anger deep inside, waiting for the right moment. Amy stumbled under the weight of a particularly heavy ore container. Jake moved quickly to help her, but Vextha was faster. The alien's energy whip cracked through the air, striking Amy across the back and sending her crashing to the ground. She cried out in pain, her hands reaching for the burning mark across her shoulders. "Weakness will not be tolerated," Vextha announced to the entire tunnel. "This female will work double shifts for a week to make up for her failure." Jake's vision went red with rage, but he forced himself to stay calm. He helped Amy to her feet, whispering words of comfort while his mind raced with thoughts of violence. The other workers quickly returned to their tasks, knowing that any show of sympathy would bring the whip down on them as well. Later that day, during the brief rest period, Amy found Jake sitting alone in their shared sleeping quarters. The small metal room housed 20 humans, with barely enough space for each person to lie down. Amy sat beside Jake on the cold floor, wincing as the movement pulled at her injured back. "Danny is gone," she whispered, tears running down her dirty face. "They took him this morning for the experiments." Jake felt his heart sink. Danny Rodriguez was Amy's younger brother, barely 18 years old. The Zephyrians regularly selected young humans for their biological research, testing new drugs and procedures that would help them better control their slave populations. None of the humans taken for experiments ever returned. "We have to do something," Amy continued, her voice breaking. "I can't lose him too. He's all the family I have left." Jake put his arm around his friend, feeling the weight of helplessness that had crushed human spirits for over 2 centuries. The Zephyrian collective had conquered Earth in 2156, turning humanity into a slave race scattered across their empire. They had superior technology, vast fleets of warships, and the backing of dozens of allied species. What could a few desperate humans possibly do against such power? The next morning brought a new assignment. Jake and his work crew were sent to the deepest levels of the mine, far below the normal excavation areas. The Zephyrian scanners had detected unusual mineral deposits nearly a mile underground, and they wanted the area cleared quickly. The work was dangerous, with unstable rock formations and pockets of toxic gas that could kill a human in minutes. Jake worked alone in a narrow tunnel, using explosive charges to break through a particularly stubborn wall of rock. The blast echoed through the cavern, sending chunks of stone flying in all directions. As the dust settled, Jake saw something that made him freeze in shock. There, embedded in the newly exposed wall, was a smooth metallic object unlike anything he had ever seen. The device was about the size of his fist, made from some kind of silver material that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Strange symbols covered its surface, shifting and changing as he watched. Jake looked around quickly to make sure no guards were nearby. then carefully pried the object from the rock wall. The moment his fingers touched the device, it activated. Light poured from the symbols, flowing up Jake's arms and surrounding his entire body. He tried to drop the object but found he could not move. Information flooded into his mind, thousands of years of knowledge from a civilization that had existed long before the Zephyrians ever left their home world. The architects, as they called themselves, had been the greatest builders and scientists in galactic history. They had created technologies that could reshape matter at the atomic level, weapons that could destroy entire star systems, and defenses that could protect planets from any attack. But they had also been peaceful, using their power only to explore and create until a great catastrophe had wiped them from existence. Now their knowledge lived in Jake's mind, burning bright with the promise of freedom. He understood how to build energy shields that could stop Zephyrian weapons, how to create faster ships than anything in their fleet, and how to construct weapons that would make human fighters the equal of any alien warrior. The chains that had bound humanity for centuries suddenly seemed as fragile as paper. Jake carefully hid the device in his work clothes and returned to the surface. That night, he found Amy and told her everything. Her eyes grew wide as he shared the incredible knowledge that now filled his thoughts. Together, they began to plan their escape, gathering trusted friends like Carlos Martinez and Lisa Parker, who had shown signs of rebellion in the past. The galaxy had held humanity in chains for too long, but those chains were about to break. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison and his small group escaped from the mining colony. The stolen Zephyrian transport ship drifted silently through the asteroid field of the Kronos system, its hull scarred from countless battles and narrow escapes. Inside the cramped vessel, Jake worked frantically at a makeshift laboratory, using salvaged materials to build the first human energy shield based on architect knowledge. Amy Rodriguez stood guard at the ship's sensors, watching for any sign of Zephyrian patrol ships. Her back still bore the scars from Overseer Vexitha's whip, but her eyes now burned with purpose instead of despair. Carlos Martinez sat at the engineering station, his skilled hands rewiring alien technology to serve human needs. Lisa Parker tended to their small medical bay, treating the wounds and illnesses of newly rescued slaves who arrived daily. The Human Liberation Front had found them 3 weeks after their escape. Commander Susan Blake appeared on their communication screen one morning, her weathered face showing the strain of decades spent fighting an impossible war. She was older than Jake had expected, with gray hair and deep lines around her eyes, but her voice carried the authority of someone who had never given up hope. "We have been watching your activities," Blake said during their first meeting. "The energy signatures from your new weapons are unlike anything we have seen. If you truly have technology that can match the Zephyrians, then perhaps it is time to stop hiding and start fighting back." The resistance network was larger than Jake had imagined. Hidden bases scattered across dozens of star systems housed thousands of humans who had escaped slavery or been born free in the outer territories. They had been fighting guerrilla actions for generations, but their primitive weapons and stolen ships were no match for Zephyrian military might. Most of their operations focused on rescuing slaves and hiding them in remote locations. Dr. Ryan Cooper was the first resistance scientist to fully understand the architect knowledge that Jake carried. The brilliant physicist had spent 20 years trying to reverse engineer Zephyrian technology with limited success. When Jake shared the ancient data files, Cooper's excitement was visible even through the holographic transmission. "This changes everything," Cooper said, his hands shaking as he studied the technical readouts. "We can build weapons that will make our ships equal to theirs. We can create armor that will protect our soldiers. We can finally fight back with something other than desperate courage." Helen Davis, the Resistance's top weapons specialist, worked closely with Cooper to adapt the architect designs for human manufacturing capabilities. They had limited resources and crude factories hidden in asteroid bases, but the ancient technology was surprisingly adaptable. Within weeks, They produced the first batch of human plasma rifles and personal energy shields. Amy Rodriguez became the Resistance's most effective recruiter, using her ability to blend in among slave populations to identify potential fighters. She worked with Lieutenant Commander Alex Johnson, a former Earth Defense Force officer who commanded the Resistance's military operations. Johnson was a careful man who planned every mission down to the smallest detail, but even he was amazed by the intelligence networks that Amy built. Maria Santos ran communications for the growing rebellion, coordinating between scattered cells and ensuring that information flowed quickly across the galaxy. Her background in computer systems allowed her to hack Zephyrian networks and gather vital intelligence about troop movements and slave transports. The enemy was beginning to notice the increased resistance activity, but they had not yet realized the scale of what was building against them. The first real test came when a Zephyrian patrol discovered their main base in the Andromeda asteroid field. 3 enemy cruisers appeared without warning, their powerful weapons already charging for an attack that would have wiped out the entire Resistance leadership. But Jake's new shield generators held against the alien firepower while human fighters, equipped with plasma cannons, struck back with devastating effect. The battle lasted only minutes, but when it ended, 2 Zephyrian ships were destroyed and the third was fleeing with massive damage. For the first time in centuries, humans had faced alien warships in open combat and won. The news spread through the Resistance network like wildfire, bringing new recruits and raising hopes that had been dead for generations. Commander Blake promoted Jake to the rank of colonel and gave him command of the new technology division. His job was to train other humans in the use of architect knowledge and establish production facilities for advanced weapons. The work was dangerous, as Zephyrian intelligence services were actively hunting for the source of humanity's new capabilities. During one supply run to a hidden factory on the moon of Xerion 7, Carlos Martinez was captured by a Zephyrian raiding force. The aliens had traced unusual energy emissions to the facility and arrived with overwhelming force. Martinez held them off long enough for the other workers to escape, but he paid for their freedom with his life. His death reminded everyone that the war they were starting would cost them dearly. Amy Rodriguez took Martinez's loss especially hard. She had grown close to the gentle engineer during their months together, and his sacrifice motivated her to push even harder in her recruitment efforts. Working with newly rescued slaves, she began identifying humans with specific skills that the Resistance needed. Former Earth military officers, scientists, engineers, and pilots all found their way to freedom through her networks. Dr. Ryan Cooper established the first major research facility on the dead world of Titan Prime, far from any Zephyrian trade routes. There, teams of human scientists worked around the clock to unlock more architect secrets. They developed faster engines for their ships, better armor for their soldiers, and communication systems that could coordinate attacks across vast distances. The Zephyrians began to realize that something had changed. High Commander Colvex, the military leader responsible for controlling human populations, issued new orders for increased security around slave colonies. Punishment squads were sent to any facility that showed signs of rebellion, and bounties were placed on resistance leaders. But it was too late to stop what had begun. The Human Liberation Front had grown from a few thousand desperate refugees into a real military force. Their ships now numbered in the dozens, and their soldiers carried weapons that could kill Zephyrian warriors in single combat. More importantly, they had something the aliens had never expected from their slaves: hope. The first major victory came when Amy Rodriguez led a raid on the prison facility where her brother Danny was being held. The assault team used new stealth technology developed from architect designs, allowing them to penetrate deep into Zephyrian space without detection. They rescued over 300 human prisoners, including Danny, who had survived months of horrible experiments but retained his fighting spirit. The rescued prisoners brought valuable intelligence about Zephyrian operations and weaknesses. Many of them joined the resistance immediately, eager to fight back against their former captors. Among them was Senator Kevin Roberts, a former Earth government official who began working to establish a provisional human government that could coordinate resistance efforts. As the year ended, the Human Liberation Front controlled several star systems and had established contact with other enslaved species throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian Collective was facing its first serious challenge in centuries, and humanity was finally ready to break the chains that had bound them for so long. The real war was about to begin. The massive fortress world of Zerion Prime hung in space like a dark jewel, its surface covered with weapon platforms and shield generators that had protected Zephyrian interests for over 3 centuries. Deep within its armored walls, 50,000 human prisoners lived in conditions that would have shamed civilized beings anywhere in the galaxy. But today, for the first time in its long history, Zerion Prime was under attack. General Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberation Fleet's flagship, watching as hundreds of human vessels dropped out of hyperspace around the fortress world. The ships were a mix of captured Zephyrian vessels and new designs built in hidden shipyards using architect technology. Each one carried weapons that could punch through alien armor and shields that could deflect their energy beams. Admiral Susan Blake commanded the space battle from her position beside Jake, her tactical display showing the positions of over 200 human ships against the fortress's defensive fleet. The Zephyrians had been caught off guard by the size and coordination of the attack, but they were fighting back with desperate fury. Energy beams and missile salvos filled the space between the opposing forces. All squadrons report ready for assault, Blake announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. This was Operation Thunderbolt, the first major offensive action in human history since the fall of Earth. If they failed here, the resistance might never recover from the losses. Amy Rodriguez prepared for the ground assault in the main hangar bay, checking her new powered armor one final time. The suit was based on architect designs, but built specifically for human physiology, giving her strength and speed far beyond normal capabilities. Around her, 200 elite fighters made similar preparations, their faces grim with determination. Remember, the mission, Amy told her assault team. We get in fast, locate the prisoner compounds, and get our people out. Tommy Chen's demolition team will handle the fortress defenses while Nicole Brown's snipers provide cover from the high towers. Everyone else follows me straight to the detention centers. Dr. Ryan Cooper watched the battle from the fleet's command ship, monitoring the performance of human technology against Zephyrian defenses. His energy shields were holding better than expected, while the plasma weapons were cutting through alien armor like it was made of paper. The powered armor suits that engineer Patricia Wong had designed were allowing human soldiers to fight toe-to-toe with Zephyrian warriors. The space battle raged for 3 hours before the human fleet finally broke through the outer defenses. Zephyrian ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light as human weapons found their targets, while the fortress's massive gun platforms were systematically destroyed by coordinated fighter attacks. Admiral Blake had studied every detail of Zephyrian naval doctrine, and her tactics exploited weaknesses that the aliens had never expected anyone to discover. Amy's assault force landed on the fortress surface under heavy fire from automated defense systems. The powered armor protected them from most of the incoming weapons, but several fighters were lost in the first minutes of the ground battle. Amy led her team through a maze of corridors and defensive positions, following intelligence gathered from rescued prisoners who had escaped from Zerion Prime in previous years. Tommy Chen and his demolition experts used shaped charges based on architect technology to blast through the fortress's armored doors. The explosions were precisely calculated to minimize damage to the prison areas while creating maximum chaos among the defenders. Meanwhile, Nicole Brown positioned her sniper team on the fortress's outer walls, picking off Zephyrian officers with rifle shots that could penetrate their personal shields. The deeper they went into the fortress, the more horrifying the conditions became. Amy's team discovered laboratories where human prisoners had been subjected to psychological experiments designed to break their will to resist. Zephyrian scientists had been testing new methods of mental control, trying to understand what made humans so difficult to completely subjugate compared to other slave species. In one laboratory, they found detailed records of the experiments, conducted on thousands of human subjects over the past decade. The Zephyrians had been particularly interested in human adaptability and resilience, trying to isolate the genetic and psychological factors that allowed humans to maintain hope even in the worst conditions. The research was intended to help them create better methods of controlling all their slave populations. Lisa Parker worked frantically in the medical bay of the assault ship, treating wounded fighters and preparing to care for the rescued prisoners. She knew from intelligence reports that many of the humans they would find would be in terrible condition, both physically and mentally. The powered medical equipment she had developed using architect knowledge would help, but some wounds went deeper than any technology could heal. The breakthrough came when Amy's team reached the main detention center in the fortress's core. Thousands of human prisoners were held in conditions that defied description, packed into cells barely large enough for single individuals. Many had been there for years, and some had been born in captivity and never seen the outside world. When Amy blasted open the first cell block, the prisoners could barely believe that rescue had finally come. "We're humans just like you," Amy announced through her armor's speakers. "We're here to take you home. Follow us and stay close. The way out is going to be dangerous, but you're free now." The evacuation began immediately, with human fighters forming protective corridors while the liberated prisoners moved toward the extraction points. Some were too weak to walk and had to be carried, while others could barely understand what was happening. Children who had never known freedom clung to their parents as they stumbled through corridors filled with the sounds of battle. During the evacuation, tragedy struck when a Zephyrian counterattack caught one of the medical teams in an exposed position. Lisa Parker was treating a wounded child when enemy soldiers broke through the defensive perimeter. She threw herself between the attackers and her patients, using her own body to shield them from the alien weapons. Her sacrifice bought enough time for reinforcements to arrive, but she paid for it with her life. Amy found Lisa's body in the ruins of the medical station, the dead woman's hands still reaching toward the child she had died protecting. The loss hit the entire assault force hard, but it also strengthened their resolve to complete the mission. Lisa had given everything for the chance to save human lives, and her memory would inspire them to save as many as possible. The space battle ended with complete human victory when the last Zephyrian defender was either destroyed or driven off. Admiral Blake's fleet controlled the space around Zerion Prime, while Amy's ground forces had secured all the major prisoner compounds. The fortress that had held humans in bondage for centuries was finally broken. Tommy Chen's demolition team planted charges throughout the fortress's main structures, preparing to destroy the facility completely. They left the prison areas intact long enough to ensure that all captives were evacuated, but the weapons platforms and command centers were reduced to rubble. Zerion Prime would never again serve as a center of oppression. Over 50,000 humans were rescued from Zerion Prime, the largest liberation in Resistance history. Among them were former Earth Defense Force officers, scientists, engineers, and ordinary people who had maintained their humanity despite years of abuse. Many joined the resistance immediately, bringing new skills and knowledge to the growing rebellion. Senator Kevin Roberts worked with the rescued prisoners to establish a provisional government structure that could coordinate resistance activities across the galaxy. The success at Zerion Prime had proven that humans could fight back effectively, and other enslaved populations throughout Zephyrian space were beginning to take notice. The victory celebration was tempered by grief for those who had died in the assault, especially Lisa Parker, whose medical skills had saved countless lives during the Resistance's early days. But her sacrifice, like that of Carlos Martinez before her, had helped purchase freedom for thousands of other humans who would live to see the galaxy without chains. As the human fleet departed Zerion Prime with their rescued cargo, Jake Morrison, stood again on the bridge and looked out at the growing armada under his command. The fortress world burned behind them, its destruction a message to the Zephyrian collective that humanity would no longer accept slavery. The real war was just beginning, but for the first time in centuries, humans were fighting as equals rather than victims. News of the human victory at Zarian Prime spread across the galaxy like wildfire, carried by secret communication networks that had operated in the shadows for generations. In the slave colonies of a dozen different species, beings who had known only oppression for centuries began to whisper about rebellion. The impossible had happened, humans had defeated the Zephyrian collective in open battle, and suddenly freedom seemed possible again. High Commander Colvex received the reports of Zarian Prime's fall while standing in his command center on the collective's military headquarters world. The tall alien's forearms trembled with rage as he studied the tactical displays showing the complete destruction of the fortress and the escape of its human prisoners. For the first time in his long career, one of the slave species had inflicted a major defeat on Zephyrian forces. "This cannot be allowed to continue," Colvex declared to his assembled staff officers. "The humans have somehow acquired advanced technology, and their rebellion is inspiring other species to revolt. We must crush this uprising before it spreads further, or our entire empire will collapse." The Vraxian bird people were the first to answer humanity's call for alliance. Their homeworld of Aerie had been conquered by the Zephyrians 50 years earlier, and their proud warrior culture had never fully accepted defeat. When Captain Nathan Walker, humanity's new diplomatic envoy, arrived in their hidden mountain strongholds, the Vraxian leaders listened carefully to his proposals for cooperation. "Your species has shown that the Zephyrians can be beaten," said Wing Commander Talon Swift, the leader of the Vraxian resistance. "Our people have the will to fight, but we lack the weapons to match their technology. If you can provide us with the tools of war, we will provide you with warriors who fear nothing in the galaxy." Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the xenobiologist who had studied alien cultures for the Resistance, worked closely with Walker to establish communication protocols with other potential allies. The aquatic Nereids had been enslaved for over a century, forced to work in the underwater mining operations of water worlds throughout Zephyrian space. The Crystalline Quartz Collective had lost their homeworld to Zephyrian expansion and now survived as scattered refugee populations. Jake Morrison established the Terran Liberation Command in a massive asteroid base hidden in the outer reaches of the Kronos system. The facility housed the growing human fleet, research laboratories, manufacturing centers, and training facilities for the thousands of new recruits who arrived daily. Admiral Blake took command of naval operations, while Amy Rodriguez was promoted to colonel and given responsibility for special operations throughout the galaxy. The human fleet had grown to include over 300 ships of various sizes, from converted cargo vessels to purpose-built warships designed using architect technology. Commander Alex Johnson led the elite Ghost Squadron, 12 ships equipped with advanced stealth systems that allowed them to strike deep into Zephyrian territory without warning. His pilots had become legends among the Resistance, appearing from nowhere to destroy supply convoys and communication relays. Maria Santos coordinated intelligence operations from the command center, using an expanded network of agents and sympathizers to track Zephyrian military movements. Her teams had successfully infiltrated several enemy installations, providing crucial information about planned counterattacks and the locations of strategic targets. The intelligence advantage had become one of humanity's greatest weapons. The Zephyrians responded to the growing rebellion with increasing brutality. Colvex authorized the use of planet-killer weapons against worlds that showed signs of supporting the Resistance, turning entire populations into examples for others who might consider revolt. The attack on New Haven, a human refugee world with 2 million inhabitants, shocked the galaxy with its casual cruelty. Amy Rodriguez watched the destruction of New Haven from the bridge of her command ship, tears streaming down her face as the planet died in nuclear fire. The world had been home to families of resistance fighters, children who had been born free, and elderly humans who had hoped to live their final years in peace. Now they were all gone, sacrificed to Zephyrian fury. "They want us to be afraid," Amy told her assembled special operations commanders. "They want us to give up and accept slavery rather than see more worlds burn. But every innocent life they take only proves why we have to win this war. We cannot let their cruelty go unanswered." Dr. Ryan Cooper worked frantically in his research, laboratories to develop countermeasures against Zephyrian superweapons. The planet killer devices used focused energy beams to destabilize planetary cores, creating chain reactions that would destroy entire worlds. Cooper's team studied captured examples of the technology, searching for weaknesses that could be exploited. The breakthrough came when Cooper discovered that the planet killer weapons required precise timing and frequency modulation to work effectively. By creating interference fields using modified architect technology, human forces could disrupt the weapons before they could complete their destructive sequence. The countermeasure was tested successfully against an unmanned target, giving the Resistance hope that they could protect their worlds. The Free Worlds Alliance was formally established during a secret meeting on the neutral world of Harmony Station. Representatives from humanity, the Vraxian bird people, the aquatic Nereids, and the crystalline quartz collective signed agreements for mutual cooperation and shared technology. Each species brought unique capabilities to the alliance, creating a military force more powerful than any of them could field alone. Senator Kevin Roberts represented humanity at the alliance negotiations, working closely with Walker and Mitchell to establish the political framework for the new galactic government. The Alliance Charter included provisions for the protection of all member species and guarantees that no single group would dominate the others. It was the first truly democratic interstellar government in galactic history. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting on multiple fronts as rebellions spread throughout their empire. Vraxian fighters attacked supply lines in the outer territories, while Nereid saboteurs struck at underwater installations on dozens of water worlds. The Quartz Collective used their ability to tunnel through solid rock to launch surprise attacks on fortified positions that the Zephyrians had considered impregnable. Commander Johnson's Ghost Squadron conducted deep strike missions against key Zephyrian installations, using their stealth capabilities to penetrate heavily defended systems. During one particularly daring raid, they destroyed the main shipyard at Kalos Prime, eliminating 6 capital ships that were under construction and setting back Zephyrian naval production by months. The tide of war began to turn as the Free Worlds Alliance gained momentum and experience. Human technology was rapidly improving as more architect knowledge was unlocked, while the alliance between different species provided tactical advantages that the Zephyrians struggled to counter. For the first time in centuries, the collective was losing territory instead of gaining it. Amy Rodriguez led a series of liberation missions that freed entire star systems from Zephyrian control. Her special operations teams had perfected techniques for coordinating simultaneous attacks on multiple targets, overwhelming enemy defenses before they could respond effectively. Each victory brought new recruits and resources to the Alliance cause. The psychological impact of the Alliance's success was as important as its military victories. Across the galaxy, enslaved populations saw that resistance was possible and that the Zephyrian Empire was not invincible. Sabotage and rebellion increased dramatically on worlds that remained under collective control, forcing the aliens to divert forces from the front lines to maintain order in their rear areas. Commander Kolvex realized that his forces were being slowly overwhelmed by an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each passing month. The humans and their allies had superior technology, better intelligence, and the advantage of fighting for their freedom rather than for conquest. Unless something changed dramatically, the Zephyrian collective would face complete defeat within a few years. The stage was set for the climactic battles that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The Free Worlds Alliance had proven that the chains of oppression could be broken, but the final victory would require sacrifices that none of them could yet imagine. The greatest test of human courage and determination still lay ahead. 3 years had passed since the first shots of the Galactic War were fired, and the tide had turned decisively against the Zephyrian collective. General Jake Morrison stood before the largest human fleet ever assembled, over 800 ships gathered at the edge of the Nexus Gate system. This strategic hyperspace junction controlled access to the Zephyrian core worlds, and its capture would open the path to their homeworld itself. The human vessels bore little resemblance to the captured ships they had started with years earlier. Using advanced architect technology, human shipbuilders had created designs that surpassed Zephyrian engineering in every category. The flagship Determination carried weapons that could crack moons and shields that could withstand the blast of a star. Beside it, hundreds of other warships prepared for the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Admiral Susan Blake coordinated the massive fleet from her command center, her hair now completely gray from the stress of commanding humanity's growing armada. The tactical displays around her showed not just human ships, but vessels from all the Alliance species. Vraxian fighters soared alongside human destroyers, while Nereid submarines prepared to attack the water-covered components of the Nexus station. All fleet commanders report ready for engagement, Blake announced to the assembled captains. Remember, this is not just about military victory. Every enslaved being in the galaxy is watching us today. We fight not just for humanity, but for the freedom of all species. Dr. Jennifer Walsh had taken over the technology development program after Ryan Cooper's death in a laboratory accident 6 months earlier. The brilliant young scientist had unlocked the final secrets of architect weapons technology, creating dimensional disruption missiles that could tear holes in space itself. These weapons would be humanity's ace in the hole during the coming battle. The Nexus gates themselves were a marvel of ancient engineering, massive ring structures that created stable wormholes allowing instant travel between distant parts of the galaxy. The Zephyrians had controlled them for centuries, using their strategic position to maintain their empire's communication and supply lines. The station that protected the gates was considered impregnable, defended by the most powerful fleet in Zephyrian space. Colonel Amy Rodriguez prepared her ground assault forces in the hangar bays of the troop transports. Her commandos would need to capture the Nexus station intact while the space battle raged around them. Any damage to the gate mechanisms could destabilize the entire hyperspace network, potentially stranding millions of beings across the galaxy. "We go in fast and hit them hard," Amy told her assault leaders. "Sergeant Derek Anderson will lead the attack on the main control center while Lieutenant Michelle Turner takes her team to secure the gate generators. Everyone else follows me to the command sections. We need to take control of the station before the Zephyrians can activate their self-destruct systems." The battle began when human long-range missiles struck the outer defensive platforms protecting the Nexus gates. The Zephyrian fleet responded immediately, their powerful warships moving to intercept the approaching Alliance forces. What followed was the largest space battle in galactic history, with thousands of ships engaged across a volume of space larger than most solar systems. Dr. Walsh's dimensional disruption missiles proved devastatingly effective against Zephyrian capital ships. The weapons created tiers in space-time that bypassed conventional shields and armor, allowing relatively small human vessels to destroy much larger enemy warships. The Zephyrians had no defense against this new technology, and their battle line began to crumble under the unexpected assault. Commander Alex Johnson led his Ghost Squadron in a series of precision strikes against the Nexus station's defensive systems. His stealth fighters penetrated the station's shields and destroyed key weapon platforms, creating gaps that the main assault force could exploit. The Ghost Squadron had become legendary throughout the galaxy, and their presence on the battlefield inspired Alliance forces while striking fear into their enemies. Amy Rodriguez's assault transports broke through the defensive perimeter and docked with the Nexus station under heavy fire. Her commandos fought their way through corridors defended by elite Zephyrian warriors, their powered armor and superior weapons giving them the edge in close combat. The fighting was brutal, with both sides knowing that failure meant the destruction of everything they fought for. Sergeant Derek Anderson and his team reached the main control center after a fierce battle through the station's central core. The Zephyrian defenders had prepared for a siege, but human weapons technology gave the assault force advantages that the aliens had not expected. Anderson's demolition charges cleared the final defensive positions, allowing Amy's forces to capture the control systems intact. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Michelle Turner led her technical specialists to the gate generator chambers deep within the station. These massive machines controlled the operation of the hyperspace gates, and any damage to them could have catastrophic consequences. Turner's team had trained for months to understand the complex alien technology, and they worked quickly to secure the generators while the battle raged around them. The space battle reached its climax when the Zephyrian commander attempted to ram his flagship into the Nexus gates themselves. Destroying the gates would trap the human fleet in the outer territories and prevent them from reaching the collective's core worlds. Admiral Blake saw the threat and ordered all available ships to intercept the enemy vessel before it could complete its suicide run. The flagship Determination led the charge against the Zephyrian suicide ship, its massive guns firing continuously as it closed the distance. Other human vessels joined the attack, their combined firepower overwhelming the enemy's shields and armor. The Zephyrian ship exploded just kilometers from the gates, its debris field harmlessly absorbed by the massive ring structures. With the capture of the Nexus station, the Alliance gained control of the galaxy's most important strategic position. The hyperspace gates that had been used to maintain Zephyrian control now served the cause of freedom, allowing Alliance forces to move quickly throughout the galaxy. The path to the collective's core worlds lay open for the first time in centuries. During the battle, human search teams discovered something unexpected in the deepest vaults of the Nexus station. Ancient architect storage devices contained detailed maps of other technology caches hidden throughout the galaxy, including weapons and defenses that surpassed even what humanity had already discovered. Dr. Walsh began immediate plans to recover these caches before Zephyrian forces could destroy them. The most significant discovery was the location of the architect homeworld, a place that had been lost for millions of years. The planet contained not just technology, but the complete historical records of the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. Dr. Peter Brooks, the Alliance's chief archaeologist, organized expeditions to begin exploring this incredible find. Senator Kevin Roberts worked with leaders from the other Alliance species to establish the formal structure of the Galactic Republic. The victory at the Nexus gates had proven that the Alliance could defeat the Zephyrian military, and it was time to create a government that could manage the galaxy after the war ended. Representatives from dozens of formerly enslaved species requested membership in the new republic. The psychological impact of controlling the Nexus gates was enormous. Zephyrian morale plummeted as news of the defeat spread through their remaining territories, while Alliance recruitment surged as beings throughout the galaxy realized that freedom was within reach. Even some Zephyrian colonies began to declare independence, tired of serving an empire that could no longer protect them. High Commander Colvex retreated to the collective's homeworld of Zephyr Prime, gathering the remaining loyal forces for a final stand. He knew that the war was essentially lost, but Zephyrian pride would not allow surrender. The core worlds would fight to the end, even if it meant the destruction of their entire civilization. Amy Rodriguez stood in the command center of the captured Nexus station, looking out at the hyperspace gates that now served the cause of freedom. The view was spectacular, with the massive rings glowing with energy as Alliance ships passed through them on their way to liberate more worlds. The gates that had once been symbols of oppression now carried the promise of freedom to every corner of the galaxy. Jake Morrison joined Amy at the observation deck, both of them reflecting on how far they had come since those dark days in the mining colonies. The scared slaves who had discovered the architect device were now leaders of the most powerful military force in galactic history. But the hardest battles still lay ahead as they prepared for the final assault on the Zephyrian homeworld itself. The chains that had bound the galaxy for centuries were finally breaking, but the price of freedom would be paid in the blood of heroes who were willing to sacrifice everything for the future they believed in. The siege of Zephyr Prime had lasted for 6 months, with the combined fleets of the Galactic Republic surrounding the Collective's homeworld in the largest military operation in galactic history. Admiral Susan Blake commanded over 2,000 ships from a dozen different species, all united in their determination to end the tyranny that had oppressed the galaxy for centuries. General Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Republic flagship Freedom's Dawn, watching as the final preparations for the assault were completed. The planet below was a fortress world, its surface covered with weapon platforms and shield generators that had been built up over generations. Every Zephyrian ship that remained loyal to the Collective had gathered here for the final battle. Colonel Amy Rodriguez prepared her ground forces for what everyone knew would be the most dangerous mission of the war. Intelligence reports indicated that High Commander Kolvex had prepared a doomsday weapon in the planet's core, a device that could destroy the entire star system rather than allow it to fall to the Republic. Her mission was to infiltrate the planet and disable the weapon before it could be activated. "This is it," Amy told her assembled commandos. "Everything we have fought for comes down to the next few hours. Captain Nathan Walker and Staff Sergeant Rachel Stone will lead the technical teams to the core facility while I handle the command centers. We get one chance at this, so we make it count." Dr. Jennifer Walsh monitored the battle from the Republic's command ship, her sensors tracking the performance of the new weapon systems that would be crucial to victory. The dimensional disruption missiles had been upgraded based on additional architect technology, and they were now capable of penetrating even the strongest Zephyrian defenses. But the planet's core weapon remained a mystery that science could not easily solve. The space battle began at dawn on Zephyr Prime, with Republic forces launching coordinated attacks against the planet's orbital defenses. Zephyrian ships fought, with desperate courage, knowing that defeat meant the end of their empire and possibly their species. The fighting was more intense than anything seen in the previous years of war, with both sides committing everything they had to the outcome. High Commander Kolvex commanded the defense from his fortress deep within the planet's crust, his fore, arms working frantically at control panels as he coordinated the battle. The core weapon was his final option, a device that would turn the planet's molten core into a stellar mass bomb. If he could not preserve the Collective, he would ensure that their enemies gained nothing from victory. Amy Rodriguez led her assault, forced through the planet's defensive perimeter during the height of the space battle, using the chaos above to mask their approach. Her transports landed in the mountainous regions near the planet's north pole, where intelligence indicated the main access points to the core facility were located. The journey to the target would take them through hundreds of kilometers of defended territory. Captain Walker's technical team included specialists in architect technology who understood how ancient devices could be integrated with modern systems. They carried equipment designed to interface with the core weapons control mechanisms, assuming they could reach them before Kolvex activated the Doomsday sequence. The margin for error was essentially zero. The ground assault faced fierce resistance, as Zephyrian defenders threw everything they had against the Republic forces. Elite warriors equipped with the best weapons and armor the Collective could produce fought from prepared positions, making every meter cost dearly. But human tactics and superior technology gradually pushed them back toward the core facility. During the fighting, Amy's team discovered something unexpected in the underground tunnels. Zephyrian civilians, including families with children, had taken shelter in the deeper levels of the facility. These beings had nothing to do with the military operations above, and many of them were just as afraid of Kolvex's doomsday weapon as the Republic forces were. Jake Morrison faced a crucial decision when reports of the civilians reached him. He could order the assault to continue regardless of casualties, ensuring that the mission succeeded, but potentially killing thousands of innocent beings. Or he could attempt to evacuate the civilians first, risking that Kolvex would have time to activate the core weapon. "We are not the collective," Jake announced to his commanders. "We do not sacrifice innocents for military objectives. All assault teams are to prioritize civilian evacuation. We will find another way to complete the mission." The decision to protect Zephyrian civilians sent shockwaves through both sides of the conflict. Republic forces worked to establish safe corridors for evacuation while continuing their advance toward the core facility. Many Zephyrian defenders were so surprised by this display of mercy that they stopped fighting entirely, unable to understand why their enemies would show such concern for alien lives. Amy Rodriguez encountered Overseer Vextha in the main corridor, leading to the core facility, the same alien who had tortured her years earlier in the mining colony. The Overseer was wounded and cornered, his weapons depleted and his escape routes cut off. For a moment, Amy considered taking revenge for all the suffering he had caused. "You could kill me easily," Vextha said, his translation device crackling, with static. "I have caused great pain to your species, but I have seen what you do here today, protecting our civilians when you could simply destroy them." Perhaps there is something we Zephyrians never understood about the nature of true strength. Instead of executing her former tormentor, Amy offered Vextha a choice. He could help her reach the core facility and disable the Doomsday weapon, potentially saving millions of lives on both sides. In return, he would be granted protection and a chance to help build a better future for his people. It was an offer that no one would have expected from a human slave. Vextha agreed to help, using his command codes to bypass the final security systems protecting the core facility. His knowledge of the facility's layout allowed Amy's team to reach the control center just as Kolvex was beginning the activation sequence for the Doomsday weapon. The High Commander was isolated and desperate, his empire crumbling around him. "You have won," Kolvex admitted as Republic forces surrounded the control center. "But I will not allow you to claim victory over the collective. Better that we all die than live as your subjects." The confrontation in the core facility lasted only minutes, but its outcome would determine the fate of the galaxy. Captain Walker's technical team worked frantically to understand the Doomsday weapon, while Amy attempted to convince Kolvex that destruction was not the answer. The device was incredibly complex, designed to be activated by a single command but almost impossible to disable once started. Vextha provided the crucial assistance that allowed Walker's team to override the weapon's activation sequence. His insider knowledge of collective technology, combined with human understanding of architect systems, created a solution that neither side could have achieved alone. The Doomsday weapon was safely disabled, and Zephyr Prime was saved from destruction. The end of the siege marked the effective end of the Zephyrian collective as a galactic power. With their homeworld captured and their military forces defeated, the remaining collective territories quickly surrendered or declared independence. The war that had consumed the galaxy for over 4 years was finally over. Senator Kevin Roberts worked with leaders from all the Alliance species to establish the permanent government of the Galactic Republic. The new constitution guaranteed freedom and representation for all member species, with safeguards to prevent any single group from dominating the others. It was the fulfillment of dreams that countless beings had died to achieve. Jake Morrison retired from military service to become an explorer, leading expeditions to chart unknown regions of the galaxy and search for other surviving civilizations. The architect technology had opened up possibilities for exploration that had never existed before, and he was eager to discover what wonders lay beyond the known worlds. Amy Rodriguez accepted the position of Director of Galactic Security, responsible for ensuring that the new Republic could defend itself against future threats while never becoming the oppressor that the collective had been. Her first priority was establishing rehabilitation programs for former collective species, helping them transition to life in a free galaxy. The reconstruction of Zephyr Prime became a symbol of the new order. Instead of being destroyed or enslaved, the Zephyrian people were offered membership in the Galactic Republic as equals. Many accepted, including Vextha, who became an advocate for reconciliation and understanding between former enemies. The planet that had once been the center of an oppressive empire was transformed into a center of learning and cooperation. Dr. Jennifer Walsh established research institutes on dozens of worlds dedicated to understanding and responsibly using architect technology for the benefit of all species. The ancient knowledge that had made human victory possible was now shared freely, ensuring that the technological advantages that had ended one war would help prevent future conflicts. Children of all species played together in the parks of New Geneva, the capital city of the Galactic Republic built on the restored Earth. Human children laughed alongside young Zephyrians, Vraxians, Nereids,